Hey dreamers! Well, that was exciting. AT&T and WBD finally separated and everyone everywhere was wondering what to do. Hold, sell, or buy. You can never predict the future. You can only do your research, pick the path that you feel most comfortable with, and the one that makes most sense in your stage of life. So today I'll tell you about a few other stocks in my portfolio that are next on the list to change, split, spin-off, or whatever. How I think about it in order to prepare. And I'll also tell you what I decided to do with my brand new AT&T and WBD stocks. Let's start with the next changes. Now, it might surprise you, but I actually do own non-dividend paying growth stocks, and among them are Amazon and Google. So in terms of Amazon, the company recently announced a stock split. And that stock split will happen in early June, somewhere in the neighborhood of between the 3rd and the 6th of June. And we'll know more exactly what that date is the closer we get. There's no changes to the company. It's just that the stock is going to have a 20-to-1 split. So that means if today the price of Amazon was $3,034.13, in the future, the price will be $151.71. Similarly, with Google, whether you own GOOG or GOOGL, they are also doing a stock split, which is expected to happen in early to mid-July. And again, as we get closer to that day, that date will be nailed down. Also, it's the same company, no changes, and also a 20-to-1 split. So if the price is $2,545.06 now, that would make it $127.25. Now, in the case of Amazon, they also announced a $10 billion buyback. And this is the first stock split since 1999. So it's definitely more of a rare event for Amazon. And in the case of Google, their last split was in 2015, right before the Alphabet rebrand. Now, why do companies do stock splits? And what is the benefit to the stockholder? Well, as this article in The Street points out, investors tend to love stock splits because they seemingly make the price of a single share of a popular company more affordable. And it's more of a psychological thing. Because if you think about it, almost like a cake or a pizza, whether you slice it into 6 pieces, 12 pieces, or 20, you still have the same size of that pizza. Now, historically, companies used to do stock splits a lot more often because this was before you could buy fractional shares and before all of the different ETFs where you could just buy pieces of different companies. So it's less common now. So how do I think about the change to Amazon and Google? There is really no change. There's no difference between owning the stock before the stock split and owning the stock after the stock split. You just are going to have more shares at a lower price. However, there is some strategy around the timing of the stock split if you plan to not hold it long term. Let me show you what I mean. I feel like this article in The Motley Fool sums it up really well. The first thing that they talk about is just to expect increased volatility both as the date approaches to the stock split and right after the stock split. And that makes sense because investors in general don't like uncertainty. And so as the uncertainty rises right before the stock split and as the uncertainty continues to happen afterwards before things settle out, there's a lot of movement in a stock price. And you can kind of see that here in this chart for Apple and Tesla when they did their most recent stock splits. But to further ready yourself about how to think about a stock split and your strategy around it is to think about 3 specific time periods. There's the announcement date, the actual date that the stock will split, and then there's a near-term time period after the split has been completed. And so you can see here with the same example of Apple and Tesla that if, let's say, the price is indexed at 100% on the announcement date, then in the case of Apple, on the split date, the price went all the way up to 122% of that value, but then ultimately settled down at 101%. So effectively, the price really skyrocketed on that split date. The same thing happened with Tesla, growing to about 160% the value on the split date. So one takeaway here is that while there's a lot of conversation and attention, there's a lot of trading going on. And if you're not planning to hold on a stock long term, that might be a good time to skim some of the cream off the top. And while in general, I'm not a fan of timing the market, it is good to prepare mentally and not get swept up into the hype of that particular day while you're making buy and sell moves. So in this chart, it furthers the point by saying if you would have purchased Tesla or Apple on the split date while the price was high, your growth of $10,000 would be a lot less than if you waited to purchase it several weeks after the split date. So that's how I will be thinking about Amazon and Google stock splits as I prepare myself for that June and July. Now let's take a look at some of the other stocks in my portfolio that are also going to change. And the first one is J&J or Johnson & Johnson. Now, this is going to be a spin-off expected to happen somewhere in the neighborhood of late 2023. And what's going to happen? Well, essentially, from a stock perspective, we are going to end up with ownership of two publicly traded businesses. The first is going to be a pharmaceutical and medical device business, the revenue of which in previous years is going to be somewhere around $77 billion. And the second business is a consumer healthcare brand, yet to be named, with revenue around $15 billion. As of right now, they're saying that the dividends of each will be lower, but the combination of the two, they say, will amount to about the same as it is today, which is in the neighborhood of 2.5, 2.6. So one concern that I have is, will the legal issues that are happening right now with J&J be attached specifically to the healthcare brand? And you can find some articles talking about this, like this one. In this article, they make reference to the analyst community talking about splitting up J&J for years. But I've actually seen the opposite, that many in the investment community were really surprised when this announcement of the split up first occurred. And it goes on to mention the risks of separating out the consumer business in particular, noting the numerous legal challenges over the past several years. And what they're making reference to is the fines and penalties relative to the link to cancerous causing agents in the Johnson & Johnson baby powder. So how do I think about J&J? Most analysts and investors are saying it's a no-brainer. Hang on to both sides and it's not going to be an issue. But I might be more on the cautious side than others. So my biggest concern is going to be if they spin off the consumer healthcare side and all of the legal penalties and actions go to that side, will that side of the business be something that I personally want to invest in and take a bet on? So that's what I'm trying to think about now as we go towards that split. So the current price of J&J is $179.90, and really if you see analysis going on right now of the two businesses, it's too early to tell. As we approach the end of 2023, they're going to make more announcements as to how they exactly intend to structure the two sides of the business. So moving on to GSK, GlaxoSmithKline, what's happening there is they actually combined two business units that they are now demergering or spinning off. And that is expected to happen in July of 2022. It's the same kind of thing that's happening with J&J, in the fact that we as stockholders are now going to own two publicly traded businesses, one being the pharmaceutical and the other being the consumer healthcare brand. Now, I go into a deeper dive of the demerger in my other video, two of my favorite UK stocks. But just to give you an update, GSK is much farther along in their planning and execution of their demerger and spinoff. They're going to call their consumer healthcare business Haleon, and they've established expectations of annual organic sales growth of between 4 to 6% in the medium term. They also expect a dividend cut to be at the lower end of between 30 and 50% payout. And now, with a lot of the uncertainty out of the way, you can see the stock has started to really do well over the past year, with analyst sentiment very high. So the current price for GSK is $46.32, and you can bet I'll be watching this closely in July. Okay, let's move on to Shaw. SJR is Shaw Communications, and they're going to be acquired by Rogers. Now, in the past, there was some uncertainty whether or not the deal was going to go through, but as time goes on, it looks like a done deal to me. The deal has cleared the first of 3 approvals needed, and it's expected to close by the end of June. So the Rogers acquisition price is $40.50 a piece, and the Shaw shares have been marching closer to that price as the time goes on. So right now the Shaw price is $30.83, and you can bet I am not touching this one until this deal is done. The output should be a company that offers a coast-to-coast solution that would now better compete with BCE and TELUS. And they've also announced that there should not be a dividend cut. And if you want to hear a little bit more about the drama that has surrounded this deal in the boardroom, you can watch my video 7 of my favorite Canadian dividend stocks. So finally, what did I do with my shares of AT&T and WBD stock? Well, first, did anybody catch that the CEO of Warner Media, Jason Kilar, left the company? Just about 10 days ago, he announced that he was leaving. He had actually been reshaping the company for the past 2 years. In addition, they also announced that Ann Sarnoff, the CEO of Warner Brothers Studios and Networks, would also be leaving. She was the first female head and was also over HBO. So let's take a look at the terms of the deal for AT&T and Warner Brothers Discovery. Essentially, AT&T received about $40 billion in cash. So they now have a nice cash infusion to invest and grow the business. They also offloaded a portion of their debt and put it into the balance sheet of Warner Brothers Discovery. Now, I have a little bit of a background in entertainment, gaming, and advertising, so I know that this is right when they say content is king, and the massive catalog of shows and films in the company are really what's going to drive the success of the company. In addition, in my mind, that also raises some questions. For me, the media and entertainment industry is pretty fickle. You're always betting that the next big blockbuster or the next big library of shows that you invest in are going to pay off. A couple of concerns that I have are noted here in this article. One, that the elevated debt load and uncertainty around strategic questions, now in my mind elevated by the significant change in management, might be an overhang to shares. In addition, the expected sales of WBD from AT&T shareholders who are more interested in a dividend-producing stock. In addition, I personally am also a little bit concerned with the fact that in the pandemic, the extensive growth in streaming may not be matched in the next 2 years. Add that to inflation concerns where households might be taking another look at where to cut costs, and streaming services might be one of those places. On the other hand, AT&T is now a much tighter communications-focused company with a lot less debt on their balance sheet and a lot more clarity in terms of management focus. So here's what I did. I used to have 2,878 shares of AT&T at a value of about $69,000. The potential scenario was that I would get 690 shares of WBD, and I estimated that the price would be around $17.98. Where we ended up at the end of the week is I got 694 shares of WBD, and I went ahead and sold it almost right away around $24. And I chose to reinvest it back into AT&T, and I also put about $20,000 more into AT&T. So at the end of this week, the price ended up at $19.54. I have 4,765 shares at a total value of $93,000. And another reason why I acted quickly was to purchase the shares before that X date of 4/13 so that I could get my next payout in the next couple of weeks. So that's my update. And that's what's on my radar in my portfolio. What's in your portfolio that's about to change? And what is your plan to not get swept up in the emotion of the moment, My approach is to always do research and have a plan ready to execute with a steady hand. Okay, guys, thanks for spending time with me today. As always, I encourage you to keep learning and implementing and do your research. And as a reminder, I'm not a financial advisor, so keep in mind these videos are for entertainment and inspiration only. See you on the flip side.